Welcome back to the Engineered Angler. If you're new to the channel, I'm Franco. I'm a professional engineer with a passion for fabricating things and making lures specifically and fishing with them. Today, we're gonna get back to lure building. I wanna build another classic, a topwater this time. But before we get to that, I wanna bring you up to speed on the surf fishing lures that I made from the steel tubes that are actually drinking straws. So I did finally take these to the beach. It was a beautiful day. I did some casting with it. And the bad news is the long, thin one, I actually lost on the very first cast that I threw it out.
Wow, my line just broke.
I didn't check my line after I actually hooked a fish, which is the good news. I actually hooked a fish with this one, which is the a bit bigger diameter tube. And in my mind, this is actually the very first fish I've ever caught fishing from the beach with my own handmade lure. But it's kind of up for interpretation. Check it out. You guys decide whether this is a legitimate catch or if I actually missed it.
I think it might be a ladyfish. All right, I'll take anything right now. This is so silly. It's tiny, but it's a fish. I think it's still on there. Oh yeah. Yeah, little ladyfish. All right, there it is. So what do you think? Does that count as a caught one? Oh, I didn't touch it. I lifted it out of the water.
All right, so I think that was a catch. You guys let me know what you think. Anyway, today we're gonna build a devil's horse, which is a classic topwater lure that's very thin, kind of tapered on the ends, and has little propellers that act as noise makers and bubble makers on the surface of the lure. And I'm going to use the simplest techniques that I can come up with so that all you first timers can follow along and get it done just as easily as I can, so stick around. So this is the basic design. The only thing I'm changing really is that I'm only going to have one belly hook. Having 3 treble hooks always seems to be like a recipe for disaster when you're trying to get a fish off the hook. So we're going to use a really simple piece of wood, a dowel, and this is just a 1/2-inch dowel, and it's really perfect for this because this lure is circular in cross section, meaning that if we cut it right here, you'll end up looking at the end of a circle like this. So the only thing a little bit complicated is that you're going to need these little propellers. And you can make your own by taking a small rectangle of aluminum is best. And then just drawing a circle and another circle and then a circle in the middle. And then you just cut out. And you'll have a drilled hole, and then you just take it and give it a twist, and you've got a little propeller. Or you can save yourself all the trouble. Get online and order a small packet. They're only a couple of dollars for 10 or 15 of them. They're not very complicated little things, and they're really inexpensive, so it's not a bad idea just to buy yourself a few. And you're gonna need some small beads, and all I ever do is buy the little assortment packet at Walmart. They're 99 cents, and you pull the ones out that you like, and I guess you give the other ones away. And of course, you're going to need a through wire, and we'll make the belly hook part of the through wire arrangement. And these lures are traditionally kind of long and thin, so we're going to make ours 5 inches, which is about 12.8 centimeters. You can make it 13. So before we start actually shaping the lure, we need to know a couple more dimensions. We need to know the distance from the tip to the beginning of that taper and the distance from the tail to the beginning of the taper in the back. I'm going to call this 1.5 inches and this 3/4 inches. And when it comes to the wire, we're going to do the drop from the top technique, and that is where we cut a slot from the top down to the center line, and then we'll drill a hole here, and so the wire will run through, make a detour for the belly eye, and then go all the way to the back and all the way through the beads. I'm going to mark the taper here and mark the taper in the back. All right, so now I've got the 2 marks on there for the locations for the tapers, and I'm just going to set it up here up against this backstop and just get it marked all the way around the circumference, and do the same thing on this end. Now we just have a couple more lines to draw. First, I just need to draw a line along the length of the dowel, and we're going to call that line the top of the lure. Now I need to set the minimum diameter of the end, which I want to be about 1/4 inch, and you can do this by hand and just eyeball it, or you can get a circle guide. And I have to say my eyeball wasn't too far off. And that works out kind of good. It's not perfect, but it'll do the job. Okay, so to cut the slot into this, a hacksaw works really well, but it's kind of hard to get it started and keep it straight. So what I like to do is either take a razor knife and slice down the line and get a little V-groove in there so I can drop the saw into it, or I can use a Dremel tool and just kind of ease my way down the line and just set a little bit of a groove so I can then take the saw and cut down to the center. Okay, now I can go ahead and just set this down in the slot and take my time cutting down. I only really need to cut down 1/4 inch, so it doesn't take long. That's pretty much to the center of that circle. So I'm pretty happy with that. I did find a little bit of a flaw in the wood here. Guess that's going to take a little crazy glue. The other eye. So I'm just going to mark a little spot here, just straight across from that slot, and I'll just line it up here on this edge and draw the line. And now I have a way to mark where I want to drill the hole for the belly eye. Okay, right. So there are a couple of ways, well, there's several ways to get this taper. Since you've got the contour lines, right, you've got where the taper begins and how big it ends at the end, all you need to do, if you want to, hand carve it, right? You can just take a razor knife and just work your way around the circle and cut down to as close to that circle at the bottom as you feel comfortable. And then you can take sandpaper and hand sand it. That's essentially all handwork. Or you can do a combination. I like to use the drill and put this in the chuck of the drill, and then sand the shape with the drill, spinning the drill into a sandpaper. And I'm going to use the drill and the power sander, and I think we can turbocharge this thing and get it going. All right, so you'll need a drill that has a 1/2 inch chuck so that it'll fit the dowel in it. And you want to go ahead and put in the tail end into the chuck first. And you don't want to tighten it up too much, just enough to hold it. And I want to spin this against the direction of this belt. So you see, I can actually taper it and round it all at the same time, so I don't have a hard, straight sort of chamfer. And you want to make sure that it's in there as even as you can, so it doesn't have a big wobble in it. And then go back to it. All right, that looks really good to me. So now we need to get that wire harness shaped. Okay, so before I can actually bend the wire, I need to drill a little hole for the belly hook eye. And I'm just gonna mark a spot about 1.75 inches right along the little line we drew to mark the belly. And this drill bit is an 11/64 bit. All right, that's got us into the slot. And now this bit is real handy because it's exactly the dimensions or the diameter of BBs. And BBs are what I'm going to use to weight it, belly weight it, so that it doesn't want to rotate while the props are spinning. And so I'm going to put 2 behind the belly eye and 1 in front of it. All right, there you go. All right, I'm going to use some orthodonture stainless steel. This is a wire that I get from a dental supply place. Actually, there's a label here. Let me show you. Actually, I'm not using the 0.51 inch diameter. I'm actually using the 0.41 diameter, which is right about 1 millimeter. So let's start bending. First thing, I'm going to put an eye on the one end. All right, so the technique is pretty simple. I'm just going to take these jeweler's pliers and rotate the wire around the narrowest part of it, leaving myself enough tag line so that I can give it at least 1 wrap. And that ought to do it. I just need to cut the tag end off. All right, there it is. And it's going to fit in the lure kind of like that. Now, before I mark where the belly eye is, I need to get all the parts in there. So let's get some beads and the propeller. I'm going to use these tiny little red beads. All right, and it'll look like that. So now I can just mark where my belly eye bend will be. Bend to 90 right there. And you do want to have this 90 aligned with your eye. And there you go. It's poking down. What I'm doing is I'm sort of eyeballing how far down I need to make this eye on the body itself. So I'm going to make this come around. That's really the most difficult part. Now I need to bend this over and do another eye over here. And this next bend should just align with this standing line. I need to put the other beads and the propeller on the back and guide myself for that. I did the same thing on this one, and with this long tag line it's just a lot easier to twist a twist and a half in this thing. Not exactly a work of art, but it'll work. Alright, so I've got this temporarily embedded in here. They both spin freely, so I'm gonna clean this up a little bit, and then we'll start sealing the end grain with just some crazy glue, and that'll take care of the end grain and keep it from getting waterlogged. All right, and now I'm gonna clean up the slot again because that glue got in there. We'll put this in and I'll glue it in place with a couple drops of super glue, and then we'll fill the slot with a combination of real thin super glue and baking soda. So this is baking soda, and I've got it in this little squeeze bottle so I can just inject it in places like this. Once that super glue hits that, it turns into rock. Now we just need to put the little BBs in there. I'm going to do the rest of the filling of the holes and gaps with UV resin. So now it's a matter of sanding, filling, and getting ready to paint. All right, I've got it sanded down. I've got it mounted on my lure holder. I've wiped it down with some alcohol. Let me show you kind of the rough state that it's in. I've got the hardware taped up, and I'm going to put a really thin coat of UV resin to just seal the surface so I can get a nice paint job on it. If you don't have UV resin, then you could just do it with some wood sealer or a coat of polyurethane if that's what you're normally using. So I'm just going to give this. All right, that was a good lunch. And I think we're ready. So this is good. It actually fills in. It's thick enough that it fills in the lows, but it also raises the nap of the wood. And I'll sand it down with a 300 grit sanding pad, and then I'll wipe it down again, and we'll get painting. You know, I think before I paint, I'm going to go ahead and make some eye sockets so I can put those 3D eyes on. So. All right, so what I like to do is just put a dot where I want the eye and put the first one in. And now all I do is see where it is, and then I make sure that the one I'm going to put in next is reasonably symmetric to this one. All right, I'll give this a little sanding and we're back to the paint booth. Okay, first things first, I like to put down an opaque white to give it a nice even coat. All right, now it's time to figure out how I'm going to paint this thing. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the yellow and from about the eyeball back and from the middle of the eyeball down, leaving just a little white on the bottom, I'm going to make that yellow, and then from the middle of the eyeball up, I'm going to do black. I'm going to leave the front white because I'm going to go just full gold up there. Then I'm going to come in with a gold scale pattern and then put a little bit of black highlights in it and give it that kind of old school black stripes and black on top. And we'll see how that comes out. All right, so I've got the yellow on there, and now we're going to switch to black. All right, that's pretty much what I wanted. White on the belly, yellow on the side, black on top. That looks pretty cool with a little more black on top. All right, now I need to finish off around the face with some gold. All right, then the last step is a good solid pearlescent red right along the chin and down the belly just a little ways. Okay, so I'm going to give this thing a shot with the blow dryer, then we'll put the eyes on, give it a mid coat with the polyacrylic, and it's ready for a good clear coat. There you go, very traditional kind of paint job. A light colored belly, good red on the chin, and lots of scales. If you make one of these, be sure you're very careful around the very front, that even though I've got tape in there, it can wick in, the clear coat can wick into the hardware, and you could end up with spinners that don't spin. All right, that looks pretty good for a first coat. Let me put it in here and let it turn. All right, it's been about an hour and a half, and this should be ready to come out. All right. So this looks really nice. I really like the way these colors blend and kind of move together in and behind the scales. It just looks so cool. Really liking it. Let's put some hooks on it, and we still got a bunch of daylight, and maybe the wind won't be too bad. It's kind of chilly. Hopefully there's not too much wind noise. All right, let's see how it looks in the water. I'm just getting some photographs and I'll share those with you at the end of the video. Thanks to everybody for watching, and if you want to see me build a different kind of classic lure, or any other lure for that matter, go ahead and put it in the comments and I'll try to do it. And if you're enjoying these kind of videos, certainly subscribe and give me a thumbs up. It really helps build the channel. I'll see you on the next video.